Hello, Central New York, and hello, hockey fans all across the internet, and welcome to the Central New York Hockey Report podcast, right here on the Studio 25 Podcast Network. You know, the women's ECAC Hockey Tournament is right around the corner this weekend, as a matter of fact. And, of course, as everybody knows, we cover the Colgate Raiders. And I wanted to talk about that tournament. I wanted to talk about the team, and I couldn't think of anybody better to have on this program to talk about that team than sports journalist and the color commentator for the Colgate women's hockey team, Miss Madison Hricik. Madison, how are you?
I'm great, Scott. Thank you so much for bringing me on. I can't wait for this tournament to start, and we got a lot to talk about today.
Yes, we do. And by the way, I will call you Maddie going forward. We just talked about this as my daughter's name is Madison, and so. But anyways, before we jump into the tournament, we jump into the team. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to Colgate.
Yeah, so I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. area. I live a little bit outside of the city, about 30, 45 minutes. If you know where Dulles Airport is, I'm like a stone's throw away from there. Okay. So I've grown up a Washington Capitals fan. My dad introduced me to the team. He grew up a Washington Capitals fan. And that was kind of how I fell in love with hockey, was just following the Alex Ovechkin era. I cannot believe that he is 12 goals away from breaking the Gretzky record. After his goal last night, it's kind of insane. But so, I mean, I grew up watching that team and falling in love with the sport, and got into sports journalism actually through the Capitals. I had an opportunity to do a job shadow with them my senior year of high school. Fell in love with it. You weren't convincing me to do anything else on the planet moving forward. And I ended up at Colgate through almost like a circumstantial email. Like, it was just kind of a cold email. I had been covering college football for about 5 seasons at the point. I just wrapped up my 6th year doing college athletics and doing all of the college sports that you can name. I've done at least one game at this point. And there weren't a ton of opportunities for grad students at Syracuse University. I'm a grad student at Newhouse right now. And so I sent an email out to the football SID, who's also the women's hockey SID for Colgate, Quinn Schmidt, and was just kind of like, hey, I'm interested in covering some college sports. I'm looking for something to do. What can I do? And he was like, you want to cover all of the things? And I said, absolutely, I will cover all of the things. And it kind of just took off from there. And so it ended up turning into just a little football. Like, I would write little previews and be like a sideline reporter during the home games, to basically me becoming the team reporter for the Colgate Raiders women's hockey program. And it's been an absolute blast. But yeah, cold email is really kind of what started it all. I was just sent out generic, hey, how you doing? And, I guess it's been almost 5 months later. Here we are. And I've been having an absolute blast.
And you do a fantastic job with it. And you're also in the broadcast booth, too. You are the color commentator for the team with Brennan Miller, who fans around here will know very well. He's also the in-game host up at the Utica Comets. So you guys are a dynamite team there in the booth.
Oh, my gosh. I love working with Brennan. He's awesome. He and I met maybe a week before the first home game of the year. I didn't meet him in person until game 1. But he and I developed a great on-air chemistry together. He's a good friend of mine. I was actually chatting with him as I was letting you know that I was coming down to the Sports Media Center, where I was getting information about the broadcast lineup for this weekend. So I was letting him know as well what was going on. But no, the two of us are great. I mean, it's such a fun time in the booth. We have got to know each other really well, and we talk about all sorts of stuff during the game too. We both have gotten good at knowing what our tendencies are on air. So he knows that I like to have a little bit more of a dramatic effect when I'm recapping goals, breaking them down. And Brennan's really good at putting in sly references here and there throughout the game. So we do a great job together. I absolutely have really enjoyed working with Brennan.
Well, like I said, you guys play off each other fantastic, and it's so much fun listening to you, because that's the best part of listening to a broadcast, when you know that the people in the booth are just having an absolute great time doing that job right there, and it really shows with you guys. So,
oh my gosh, we have a blast together. We really do.
Absolutely. And so let's talk about this Colgate Raiders women's team, because they're number 5 in the nation, which is that seems like their spot. 4 or 5 that you can just mark them in right there for sure. Right?
Pretty much.
They're 27-7-0 in the finished up in the regular season, and they're going to get Princeton in the quarterfinal series. Best 2 out of 3 game series, starting at the Class of 1965 arena on Friday night. So First of all, before we get into the tournament itself, tell us what you saw about this team this year, because there was a lot of changes for them. Starting right behind the bench and down through, they lost a lot to graduation, but here they are. That Colgate train just keeps rolling along.
Yeah, I mean, it really is just a continuation of last year. I think I'm going to use a word that the team and Coach Steph DeCosta said to me quite a bit, and that is that this team is resilient. I wish I could give you an exact number of how many times I've heard the word resilient or resiliency this year. It's kind of insane how much they say it, but it is really accurate. They are really good at finding ways to win games when it feels like the odds are stacked against them. They've done a great job of taking a lot of the preseason doubt that people had about Colgate. I mean, this is a team that made it to the Frozen Four last year, who lost their head coach to the PW, who lost multiple production players to the PW or to graduation, what be it. And you know, outside of Kalti Kaltenkova, you had players that were productive, but you didn't have as much star power as the team had last year. And so I feel like a lot of college hockey fans were a bit kind of, they had Colgate as a question mark. And so I think Coach DeCosta's done a great job of kind of negating all of that and finding ways that even with a really small roster, making things work for this team. You could tell that they have a belief in their head coach, despite the fact that, you know, it's his first year as a head coach. And I think that shows how good of an assistant coach he was, especially considering how long of an assistant coach at least how long he held that position. Because, I mean, he's known the senior class for probably 7 years by now, maybe 8 if you're Kalti. Because remember, he recruited all of those seniors. Mm-hmm. And so he's known this team forever, and that has played into a massive part of it as well. But when you look at the different challenges that team has faced, figuring out how they're going to operate those first 3 weeks of the season, and then you lost Gwen Eichfeld for, you know, the rest of the regular season and skating with just a handful of defenders, and Alyssa Biederman playing on defense for like a month and a half. And then and then you have Kaya Malakino, who's been out the last about month now. And so they're skating with technically one skater on the fourth line offensively. So, I mean, they've had a very limited roster. And I think that they've done a really good job of making it work for them. I don't know if there are many teams around the country that would be as successful with the number of skaters that Colgate has played with this year.
And you know what? You're so right about that. Just speaking volumes to the job that Coach DeCosta has done. I mean, I honestly, you know, well, Colgate's loaded with talent. Sure. I mean, they have a ton of talent on that roster, but I think he's a coach of the year candidate, given all of the turbulence that you just mentioned. And not to mention the question marks coming into the season, because you're right. They lost so much to graduation. Coach Fargo goes to New York with the PWHL, but I think the best way I could think of to describe it, Coach DeCosta really calmed the waters when it seemed like it was going to be really turbulent. He calmed everything down.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think one thing that stood out to me when I've done like broadcast calls with the other head coaches throughout this year, Brendan and I will sit down and we'll talk with whoever Colgate is playing that weekend. And we ask every time, like, you know, when you compare how Greg Fargo was to how Steph is, what are some differences? And almost every single coach at this point has said there aren't any. Like there's not. I think we've had one coach that was like, yeah, they're a little bit more like their power play set up a little different. And that's it. Like every coach we've talked to this season has said like it feels like nothing's changed. They're still the same Colgate. And again, it goes back to how good of an assistant he was and how much he soaked up that knowledge and how good of how much hockey IQ that Steph has. Because it takes a lot of hockey IQ to be able to transfer what you're seeing your boss do, to be able to take that information and then apply it to how you want your team to operate as the head coach. And I think he's done a really good job. I think he's made a statement in his first year that, you know, even with the changes, that this program is still a force to be reckoned with, particularly throughout the regular season. We'll see what happens postseason, but I think for a regular season first year as your head coach, I feel like Colgate fans have a lot to be excited about right now.
For sure. And, you know, we talk about Kalti Kaltenova. Just, I mean, to say that she stepped up, I know that sounds kind of weird given the career that she's had, but
right.
Really, I mean, she has really stepped up and put the team on her back and just carried them right to where they are.
Yeah, she has done an amazing job this year, just being everywhere on the ice. And Brian and I have said this before, but she is probably one of the most PWHL ready players in this year's
Without a
draft
doubt.
class.
I'd say
With
first
the
round pick.
other, I think she'll be first round. The only other skater that I think would kind of give Colty a run for her money is Abby Murphy at Minnesota. I think she's an incredible player as well. It also helps when Abby has Olympic experience as well too. So that does play into a little bit. But
Yep.
I mean, she's a great player on the ice to watch. You can tell that she is constantly scanning. Her awareness is so profound. I always think back to the goal against Princeton. I know we'll talk about Princeton in a little bit, but it made an appearance on SportsCenter Top 10. I think it was like the number 6 play. Like she was just by herself over at the corner and just kind of went between the legs and just popped it up into the like top shelf of the goal. And it was, I mean, Brendan and I lost our minds in the broadcast booth, if I'm being totally transparent here. But I learned after that apparently she had been practicing that throughout the week and had kind of made an acknowledgement to herself, like, if that opportunity arises, I'm going to do it. And I think that it's such a small thing, but to have the wherewithal in the moment, especially when you know that play started from a turnover, to be able to recognize that quickly that she has the space to be able to pull that off. I think that's a great example of how far she's come. She's always been an outstanding player for this team, but for her to just kind of take it a step further and continue to build upon what she's done previously has made her a better hockey player. It's made her a better on-ice leader for this Raiders team as well.
No doubt about it. No doubt. And, you know, you mentioned Alyssa Biederman had to play defense for a month and a half. She has been just a huge part of this team, too, that was obviously having a fantastic career through the first 2 years here. And now this year, again, she's another one that has absolutely stepped up. And I kind of like to refer to her as the dish and magician because she's like about 31 assists on the season, the playmaker of this Colgate Raiders hockey team. There's no doubt about it. And tell us a little bit about her and what she's meant to this team.
She is spunky. She's very fiery. I love her personality. I really do. She's a bit sarcastic on the ice a little, which I think bodes well. I think the thing that stands out to me more than anything else is she's one of the shortest Division I women's college hockey players in the country, but she plays like she's 6 feet tall. She takes up so much space on the ice when you watch her play. And some of it's her speed, some of it is her like some of it is just her general hockey IQ. A lot of it also just has to do with the fact that she's skated with her line mates for so long. Like she just has a great chemistry with so many people on the team. And she's able to make adjustments really quickly. I mean, there were times she played center the last couple of weeks and she would go and take a face off. And I was like, is there anything this girl can't do? Like, I think like the only thing we haven't seen her do this year is go between the pipes in place of like Farah or Hannah Murphy. Like, I feel like the only thing we have not seen Alyssa do this year. But no, I mean, she really is a player that knows how to be flashy, but also be consistent when she is flashy. There's very, very few times where she's doing something that kind of gets an ooh and ah from the crowd in the stands, but then it also not turn out the way that it was supposed to. She's really, really effective for this team. I also love her on the penalty kill. I think she is a huge benefit to that Raiders penalty kill. And she just adds this extra level of forecheck that makes it so difficult for other teams because she's immediately going after the puck once it's cleared. But I mean, she's somebody that a lot of teams focus on Colty, but you also can't forget about Alyssa because she's always kind of there. You never know where she's going to be, but she's always kind of there when she's on the ice.
I kind of think of her as like the Swiss Army knife of the Colgate Raiders. She can do anything. Yes. I mean, that's
yes, like truly. I say it as a joke, but also not at all. Like literally, the only position we have not seen her play at this entire season is goalie. Like that is how much like she has done for this team. It's insane.
Well, let's talk about the goaltending because Hannah Murphy is having an outstanding season. And even for her, this was a little bit of a change, right? Because in the previous season, she's had Kaylee Osborne there, who they usually, split or went at 60-40 or whatever. But now the show is hers, and she has really stepped up.
Yeah, I've loved watching Hannah this season. I think she's done a really good job of taking advantage of the fact that she is the starting goaltender. She's not splitting time anymore. She doesn't have to feel like she's competing for more ice time at any point. Like that job is hers. She's earned it and she's taking that to her advantage. She's also extremely poised in goal. Very, very poised. I don't feel like there's ever a moment where she's frantic. At least from what I've seen throughout her, like for her throughout this season, I don't feel like there's ever been a moment where I'm like, she looks frantic on the ice right now. She always feels like she's in control. Another thing that I love about her is she's not afraid to make plays herself. I love the fact that she has an assist this season. I think it was way back at the beginning of the season during non-conference play, but I think it's awesome. Like you don't see that every so often. You don't see that very often when you have, particularly in college hockey. It's very rare that a college hockey goalie gets a point during the season. So for her to be able to pick up an assist, I'm like, that's pretty cool. But the fact that she's not afraid to make plays, she's not afraid to step out of the goalie crease and send the puck around or try and get an outlet pass into the neutral zone. I think that it just is a testament to the kind of leader she can be. She's also just one of the sweetest people you'll ever meet, like truly. She's such a kind soul, and you could tell she loves the game and she just loves being around people. And I think that'll carry far for her as well. I mean, she's somebody that could be on a PWHL draft watch. It's really hard to get drafted in a 6-team league, particularly when you can only keep about 3, maybe 4 goalies, depending on how you want your roster to look. But she's shown up in a couple projections as maybe a goalie that could be drafted if a team decides to go for a goalie. So it wouldn't surprise me if the opportunity arises that she hears her name called. But at the same time, I also think that if she doesn't get drafted, she'll find her way to a training camp or something of some sorts come next season.
I think so. And, I would love to see either the PWHL expand or develop maybe some kind of like a minor league system. That would be so awesome. That really would. I think that would be huge for the growth of the game.
I would love to see the PW expand. When they announced that they were looking at adding 2 more teams, what was it, a month and a half, 2 months ago? I was ecstatic. Truly. I've had a blast watching the league this year. I think the names this year are just adding so much more pride to fans as well. I love the names. I loved when they first were revealed and then the jerseys came out. Brent and I were talking about it during a game at one point. We were like, these are awesome. And so it's been really fun to watch that league develop. I hope that it does expand. I know that there's supposed to be more information coming out, hopefully sooner rather than later. But I'm excited to see if they decide to take the 2-team expansion and make it a reality. I think that would be huge for this upcoming draft class this year, but also like the current juniors. Like I think that those 2 classes, if the expansion draft happens in the next 2 seasons, that's going to impact them in a massive way moving forward.
Yeah, and I think so. And the women's talent pool just keeps growing and growing, growing. So it only makes sense. And something just occurred to me. Usually this show has gone completely off the rails by this time. This is the longest we've ever stayed on track, I think. So I'm working with a true pro here. This is great.
Don't jinx it now. Trust me, I can get us off the rails.
That's because I've been quiet the whole time.
Our producer he has been silent. He hasn't thrown me off yet.
I have not interjected myself at all.
Yeah. So
listen, if we want to go off the rails, we can go off the rails. I know how to do that. Don't worry.
I just can't believe we stayed on them this long. That's amazing to me. But before we get too far off the rails, I just wanted to finish up with the Raiders. Just a quick thought. Sarah Stewart, who was named team captain this season as a junior, tell us a little bit about her leadership skills and why she makes such a great captain.
I mean, very similar to Hannah. She's sweet as can be. Truly, she's such a people person. You can tell that she loves that team, like truly. And she's such a smart hockey player. Another player that is kind of a little bit like a Swiss Army knife, can do a little bit of everything. Incredible at faceoffs, truly. Like one of the best centers I've ever seen take faceoffs on a regular basis. And I think that the thing that stands out to me the most is the fact that you can hear her on the ice constantly when she's skating. Her and Hannah as well. The number of times that I've heard Hannah on the ice during games is insane. But Hannah and Sarah do a great job of kind of sharing that leadership role together, but also making it their own. They both have their own leadership styles. And for Sarah, a lot of it is being that teammate that is a friend to everybody. She knows how to develop relationships on and off the ice with this team. And she has an absolute blast playing in a Colgate jersey and playing at the 1965 arena. Like she absolutely loves what she gets to do. And you can see it. She is a very joyous hockey player when she's on the ice.
Yeah, and she does. She always looks like she's having so much fun, and it's a fantastic thing to see. So we got our tournament starting this Friday, which can't wait
Yes.
for. I mean, this is the best time of the year. Everybody says, the holiday season, it's the most wonderful time of the year. No, it isn't. Playoff time is the best time of the year.
Playoff hockey season.
Exactly. And of course, with the ECAC, the powerhouse that this conference is in, I mean, it's got 6 of the top 15 teams in the country in it. Colgate is seeded number 2. Princeton's seeded number 7, and they're 13th in the country. So which tells you just how strong this conference is. Tell us a little bit about the Princeton Tigers.
I keep going back and forth on how at least I feel about the matchup. I think that this is going to be an insane weekend for these two teams, both of them. I think that it's going to be high intensity from the start. I mean, this is a team that knows how to beat Colgate because they did in the regular season. Yes. And I think that makes this a lot more of an interesting series because Princeton is ranked. Yes, they haven't had the best end to the regular season than I think that they would have preferred. But at the same time, they know what it takes. It's not like they lost and the wheels are going to fall off the wagon. They know what they need to do. They know that they didn't have the best game when they visited Colgate, just a few weeks ago. They know that they're going to have to play better than they have in the last few games. Ending their season with a loss to RPI was a tough pill for that team to swallow. Now they have to they went and turned around and beat RPI, and now they have to see if they can find redemption against Colgate, who they split with in the regular season. So, I mean, I think that they're going to be hungry. I think they're going to come out swinging. I think that Colgate did a great job of limiting Mackenzie Alexander last time around. I don't think Mackenzie's going to let that happen again. Same with Emerson O'Leary. I don't think the two of them are going to let that happen again. I think they're going to want to have their time to show Colgate what kind of talent that the Raiders are going to have to face. And for me, I love it. I think that's amazing. I think that's an incredible opportunity. I also would argue that I don't think there are a lot of quarterfinal matchups where the higher seed is sitting here thinking it's going to be an easy weekend.
Right.
You can look up and down all of these quarterfinal games, and I really don't think that you're looking at a matchup where you're like, yeah, that's going to be done in 2 games, guaranteed. I think that there's always going to be a risk. Cornell and Union, I don't know if I like that matchup for Cornell. I think that is a tough matchup. Union has been sneaky good this year. They have been a difficult team to beat. Absolutely. The Quinnipiac Clarkson series, those two have been going back and forth all season in the rankings. So I mean, it literally came down to the last game of the season, who was going where. And so I mean, then the St. Lawrence series is also going to be amazing as well. Like, I feel like this slate of quarterfinal games is going to be absolutely insane. I'm kind of sad that I have a class on Friday morning and I'm going to be missing the beginning of some of those games. Since Colgate's game is at like 6 o'clock.
Well, if you want, we can edit this part out and you can skip it. It's it's no problem. They won't know.
So here's the thing. I will be at the Colgate game. That is guaranteed. I just have an assignment that's due at midnight. I will be there. I just have an assignment that's due Friday night that I need to make sure that I get done before I leave for Colgate. That is all it is. I do have to remember that despite the fact that hockey has controlled my life for the last 6 months, I do need to graduate on time. So that does matter at the end of the day.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, maybe let's not let my professor
graduate on time.
Well,
come on, let's get our priorities together here.
But no, I'm so excited for this weekend. I think that the matchup at Hamilton is going to be absolutely incredible. I hope the atmosphere inside Class of 1965 Arena is going to be at a high. I feel like that's going to be a really intense weekend. So I'm hoping that there's a good fan turnout on both sides. I'd love to see. It wouldn't surprise me if a bunch of Princeton fans made the trip either, especially with this being a weekend series.
Sure.
And so, I feel like this weekend could be really exciting. I don't know if we're going to see a lot of 2-game sweeps. I really don't. I think that at most we'll see 2, but I would reckon that maybe 3, potentially all 4 quarterfinals games go to a Sunday game.
It wouldn't surprise me one bit, just because of how even the matchups really are. I mean, that's for sure. Some keys to win for the Raiders.
Special teams absolutely is going to be a key for that program. Being successful both on the power play and on the penalty kill. Both of them have done really well in the last few weeks. Colgate had that weird, I think it was like a month stretch that kind of snapped around the Union RPI weekend where the Raiders were just struggling on the power play. They weren't performing bad by any means. They were getting shots on goal. They were getting quality chances. They just hadn't scored a power play goal in a while. Mm-hmm. They seem to have remedied that and have made some of those adjustments and are kind of back on that pace. They're still a team that's converting on the power play well over 35% of the time, which is an insane stat to fathom.
It really is.
It's a monstrous stat.
You ever notice that the head coach of the other team always argues every single time their team gets penalty because they don't want this team going on the power play?
They're like, oh, come
it could
on.
be the most obvious no, really?
No, I know. It's one of those where it's just like, it's one of those where it's just like, whatever you do, don't take a penalty. Whatever you do not take a penalty. Exactly. And so I feel like if they're able to draw penalties, and I think that's another part of Colgate's special teams unit that is extremely underrated. This team knows how to draw penalties just as much as they know how to score on the power play.
Right.
And I think that if they're able to convert a couple special teams power play goals, it would not surprise me. We've been inches from seeing another shorthanded goal from Ebba Peiss or Alyssa Biederman. It would not surprise me if they find the back of the net on the penalty kill at some point in the next couple weeks, whether that be in the quarterfinals or potentially moving forward in postseason play, wherever that may be. I would not be shocked if that happens. But yeah, special teams is going to be huge. I think another thing that's going to be a massive aspect for Colgate is controlling the pace of play. I think Princeton really is going to come out fighting. They're going to want to take control, suck the life out of the class of 1965 arena instantly. And so if they can dictate that pace of play, that is going to be a massive boost to this Colgate team. They've done it before against ranked opponents, and they're able to do that. I think that's good. And then I think the last one is avoid overtime. If you can avoid playing if you can avoid playing free hockey, which I know everyone loves playoff overtime hockey. Trust me, I do. However, I think for the sake of the Raiders, if you're trying to avoid, particularly if you're trying to avoid a game on Sunday, I really don't think a Friday overtime game or a Saturday overtime game is going to be beneficial to either side.
It's just one bounce. That's all it is.
Exactly. Exactly. And overtime losses are so difficult to mentally overcome at times.
Correct.
And
Absolutely.
I think if you can avoid that, that's going to help this team significantly.
I think so too. And that's the thing that's so challenging about the ECAC quarterfinals, especially for the road team, because all three games are in one venue. So that's really tough. But I tell you, I can't wait for it. It's going to be so much fun. And Maddie, this has been so much fun. I appreciate you coming on this show so much. And again, like I said, I can't believe that we didn't get that far off the rails. It's amazing.
Listen, if this is the time we can get thrown off the rails, if there's anything we feel like talking about at this point, we can get thrown off the rails at this point. I got nowhere else to be today. So.
I will tell you that, I know you're looking forward to Alex Ovechkin breaking the record. For me, it's a bit mixed emotions because I grew up, Gretzky was my idol growing up. And so seeing one of his big records fall, it's like, I know. Not saying Ovechkin doesn't deserve it, but it's like, at the same time, it's like, it was part of my childhood,
Well, it's funny because I think as I've gotten older and I've had a better understanding of the game and a larger appreciation for the history, I think that I've understood the weight of this record more because originally, growing up, my dad always told me, like, Gretzky's the great one. No one's ever going to touch that record. Like, it's an absolute, it's a monstrous number to try and beat. And then here we are. I'm 23 years old, who remembers when she was 6 years old watching Ovechkin when he still had the A on his jersey, 11 goals away from the record. Like, it's insane to see how far we've come and how productive he is. So I understand both sides. I'm really excited to see it happen because I think it's going to happen. It's going to happen sooner than I wanted. I have always joked that I wanted to be working in the NHL when it happened. It's not going to happen, unfortunately, but it was a little sooner than I wanted, but I'm not going to complain either. But at the same time, I understand a lot of hockey fans being like, oh my gosh, like this record that we never thought was going to be broken is going to fall. And that's it's hard to grapple with at times. And so I can see both sides for sure.
Yeah. But I tell you, with your talent, you will be working in the NHL sooner rather than later, beyond a shadow of a doubt. No doubt.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Maddie, where can we find you on social media?
So you can find me. I am most active on X or Twitter or whatever we want to call it. I have done my best to try and start switching over to like Blue Sky and things like that. I don't know. I'm still a little bit of Twitter. I still have a little bit of a Twitter addiction.
Just so much easier.
And it's just the comfort of it, if I'm totally honest. And frankly, I have enough going on my plate with being in grad school and doing this hockey thing and like elsewhere. Like I need a little consistency in my life occasionally. It just happens to stay on my social media. So X is where you can find me. The easiest, it's at Sporting Mads. And then my Instagram as well, it's at Sporting Mads 14. So not much different there. But that's the easiest way to see my content. Most of my on-air content and everything like that will be on my Twitter for sure though.
Excellent. Well, again, thank you for taking the time to come on and talk to us. This has been so much fun, and you are welcome back anytime you want to come on this show, because even if we want to just do something completely off the rails, that's fine too. So that's
we can just have fun.
Absolutely. And I will definitely see you Friday night down at the Class of 1965 Arena. So I'll make sure let's make sure we stop and say hi, and we'll have a great time down there Friday night.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for bringing me on. This has been a blast.
Thank you, man. We appreciate it. All right. That was Madison Hricik, and that is all the time that we have. So thank you for watching. We appreciate it. And we will see you next time on the Central New York Hockey Report podcast.